Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast with me, Johnny Pardo. Today, I have a special guest on the episode. I have my friend David, who is from Canada, and he is going to talk to us about self-confidence, systems, habits, and setting yourself up for success. So, David is a life coach, a business consultant, and a speaker helping people become confident leaders inside themselves. So, David, it's great to have you on the show. I'm glad we can make this happen. So, could you tell us a little bit about, well, a couple of things that I know from you. One, how you got into this area for anyone who's new to you. And secondly, a little bit about your transformation from where you used to be to where you are now.
Absolutely. Well, first off, brother, I appreciate you having me. So thanks for having me here. But yeah, so kind of a little bit about myself. You already said it. I'm from Canada here. I'm somebody who's really into, wellness, fitness, and just living that active lifestyle, but also really trying to impact people in the way that I know how to do it. And I think that everybody has a unique thing that they bring to this world where they're able to impact it in a special way. But for me, it really started with kind of hitting rock bottom first. I went through kind of a really tough time in my life where my dad, he got caught stealing some money, and it really impacted my family. And so as a young kid, this is in high school when this happened to me. I didn't really know how to deal with my thoughts, feelings, and emotions at that time. And so I turned to using drugs and alcohol, unfortunately. Like that was kind of the norm of what was happening. I'm not too sure what it's like in the UK, but everyone was like partying around me. And so that was the trap that I went into. And I ended up kind of going down this dark spiral in my life and hitting my rock bottom. Eventually, I dropped out of university. I stopped playing hockey. And it was a really tough time for me. And that was when I found personal development. And I was so interested in it that I was like, wait, somebody can change their life around. What are thoughts, feelings, and emotions? What is self-awareness? What is all of this other stuff? And so I really went on my own journey, and the changes that I noticed were so impactful that I ultimately wanted to share it with other people. And that's when I started sharing my stuff on Instagram. I got into the coaching space, and it really led me into the business that I've created today, years later.
Awesome. Yeah. So, well, thanks for sharing that, David. And I know it sounds like, yeah, going from like rock bottom and then actually going through a little bit of an aware, not being able to deal with or feeling like you weren't able to deal with it at the time. So you went to kind of like drugs and alcohol and things like that.
Yeah.
But like an individual who's perhaps maybe in a dark place, like we all could, I mean, there's, we're all potential to go into those places
Yeah.
at some point in our life. Obviously,
Yeah.
and thanks for sharing your story. What kind of guidance could you give that individual in terms of actually being able to even see like there's hope, like, that things can change around?
Absolutely. I think that it really comes from believing in yourself and believing in your capabilities. And when you're in that dark place, I think that you don't have any self-belief in yourself. And so I like to say, go in situations that you control. And right before we hopped on here, we were just talking about running and exercise and stuff like that. And so
Yeah.
that's why I'm such an exercise advocate, because exercise is a place that you control. And so when you can go into that type of environment that you control and you can show yourself you're capable of doing things, it starts to bleed over into other areas of your life. And so I like to use the running example here. We were just talking about it, but
Very strong runners.
let's say you go on the treadmill and you run for 5 minutes on speed 5. And it's really difficult the first time you do it. You barely get it done. And then 3 weeks later, you're running on speed 7 for 7 minutes. You're showing yourself that you're capable of doing something more than you thought you were before. And that's what's building competence in your abilities here. And that has a direct impact on your confidence in your life. And so that would really be the place that I would start with somebody, would be going into an environment that you control, an exercise setting that you like to do. Not everyone likes weightlifting. Not everybody likes running. And not everybody likes yoga. Go into a place that you like and that you control, and start to build that belief in yourself in that area. And it's going to start to transfer over into other aspects of your life.
Yeah, I really like how you brought that up, because there can be this tendency. I know I've certainly been there with my struggles when I've been in some dark places, didn't like myself, and have a good relationship with myself. And it's like the focusing, or almost want to focus on like everything that I don't control. It was that place of so and so like me, does that girl like me, or it's like will that new employer like me and give me the job, and all these kind of things are what's going to happen, and if I don't get this amount of clients, all those kind of things. And actually going back to things like or being able to do things that were like in my control, even though I wasn't necessarily always in the massive personal growth space at the time, really helped me. And I know it's something I've given like clients, what can you do each day as a small action that's actionable and not over the top, because we can overwhelm ourselves as well, right? So
absolutely. And I think it's about like doing it for you too, right? Like a lot of times maybe somebody gets into, let's say, fitness, and it's like a means to an end type thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to do this so I look better, or so this person likes me, or so this happens. And it's like, when we get into that, then maybe there's kind of like a trap that we're falling into, but it needs to kind of be an end in itself, where like you're doing it solely for you, to like feel better about yourself, to have more energy each day, to do something in that regard. So I think that that's really important too.
Yeah, for you. Yeah, it's a really good point on that one. David, I know one of the things I admire about your content and your character is this kind of like systematic approach. I know you've helped a lot of people, even in our world, with like their systems and their organization and things like that. How has putting systems in place in your life helped your confidence?
It's changed my life, actually. I think that I'm just one of those people that's kind of, I'm going to say I'm a nerd about organization, planning, and all that kind of stuff. But before I was doing all of that, I felt very disorganized in my life. And when you are disorganized and you don't have those systems in place, it's hard to do what you want to do all the time. Like you're basically hoping for things to happen instead of making sure that they happen. And the systematic approach, whether you want to apply it to your life or business, allows you to kind of see the steps in what's happening. Maybe it's throughout your day, maybe it's throughout a process that you have in your business, and you can really start to see where things fall apart too. So for instance, we'll say like routine, your routine that you have each day. If that's kind of down to a system that you have, where you know you work out best in the morning, this is your best work period for the day, this is the best time for me to take client calls, or whatever it may be, you can start to see like how your days are going. But before, the approach that I was taking was like, I'm just going to try and free flow my days, and then I'm not getting what I want to done. Maybe I'm not working in an optimal state. And it just led to me being stressed out all the time and not confident that I was getting myself to where I wanted to go. So the systems really allow you to get yourself to that place, but then also optimize it so you're doing it in the most effective and efficient way.
I like what you said about the time slots and what works for you. I know I was talking to the one of the personal trainers I'm friends with at the gym, and he's like, "See you in the morning session." I went, "You won't." Not because I'm lazy. I'm like, not because I'm lazy, but because that's not my time for exercise. And I said, "You'll see me at the 6 o'clock spinning class, and I'll be there for the full length and more, but you won't see me in the morning." And that's just my style. It's got to be lunchtime or evening. And I know some people love to, work out in the morning and things like that. But yeah, I like what you said about finding what works for you.
That's so important, man, because like everybody's looking at what everybody else is doing. That's like the downfall of social media today, is everybody's so caught up in what everybody else is doing that we're trying to like take from them and like we see somebody doing this and we're like, oh, that's what we're supposed to do. But we're not taking into consideration what actually works best for us. And so like a good example is like some people try to maybe fit in a work slot at 6 p.m., let's say, but they're already burnt out from their day because they heard somebody else works better at night. And it's like, no, you got to work to your optimal schedule. Maybe you work best from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. And that's when you want to be putting your most important work. Or maybe you do work better at night and you've been trying to push yourself in the mornings, but you don't have the energy yet. And so it's really about like taking a step back and being like, what actually works best for me? And I think that that's really an important question.
And do you find if people don't ask themselves that question, because I'm curious, because I've been caught in it, is it because when they're not doing that, do you think sometimes they've got an intention and then they just don't stick with it? Because for me, I know I've sometimes got that schedule like mapped out. And I'm like, I should be doing that then, should be doing that then. And then I've just like in the past not stuck to it. And that ultimately, I guess, is coming back to self-awareness and figuring out when is the best time for you.
Yeah. So I actually really like that you just said that because that's super important is like when we create this schedule for ourselves or this system, it's like we're trying to predict the future basically. And what happens is sometimes it doesn't work the way that we want to. And so a lot of people actually well, I've seen this a lot when they create a schedule for themselves and then it doesn't work out maybe perfectly the first couple times, they give up on it. And I actually like to say it's like, hey, if it doesn't work out for you, like that's amazing evidence to be using for you to create the next plan for yourself. And so maybe it's you're trying to schedule too many things in such a tight time period. Maybe you're not taking into consideration like how long a task takes, how long it takes me to get back from the gym, get showered and eat my breakfast before I go into my work period. Like it's all about just learning and taking in the information that happens throughout your day and then using that to create a better plan for yourself in the future.
Yeah, love this. And the reason I'm talking about this so much is I've been caught up in this mistake so many times. It's like, oh, it's like half an hour for the gym. It's like, oh, Johnny, it's like, you got to walk to the gym, you got to shower, you got to stretch, you got to warm down, all those kind of things. It's just like, and your session's longer than 30 minutes anyway. So it's like, yeah.
Exactly. And like the only reason that I like know my schedule so well now is because I've messed up so many times along the way before. Like it was this constant process of like trying something, it not working the way that I maybe wanted it to, and then retrying something else and just continuing that process over and over and over again, which is kind of like a lot of things in life too. We try things, we see what works, what didn't work, and then you try and, go in a different direction after.
Yeah, I think there's some important points here from like seeing what works for you and then the trial and error. And the reason kind of like keen to point this out is because I see a lot of people, and I've seen it in people I've worked with, of like this burnout, this frustration, this use of willpower, and that impacts your confidence at the end of the day because you're not performing where you want to go, and that's why I wanted to really touch on the importance of systems because I know you look very carefully into them. And yeah, I guess like what I was also going to ask you about is someone who perhaps wants to start or get rid of habits. And I know habits is quite like could be quite a broad subject, but like, what's your view to anyone who just like wants to start something in terms of short versus longer versus many versus little? How do you usually approach it when someone wants to form and start something new?
Habits wise, I would say that it has to start off with a short-term approach and like one thing at a time, because I'm sure that you and I have both maybe tried this ourselves or even seen other people where we try and implement like so many things at once that it gets overwhelming and then it doesn't work out and then we're back to square one. And so my kind of approach for new habits is like, let's just focus on a day or a week at a time and try and do one thing really well. And then if we continue to do that on a daily or weekly basis, eventually it's going to build into a long-term habit. But I've definitely been guilty did this before where I'm like, all right, I'm going to do my morning routine. I'm going to do the cold shower, the journal, the meditation, read my 10, and I just stack all these things up for myself. And then if I don't get it, I think I'm a failure, or I think that I can't do it. And it's like, hey, what if we just started with just the journaling in the morning? And then when that gets really good, then we can add in the reading too, or something like that. But I think we're always just trying to make it perfect right away, but it needs to be that messy action that we start with that really gets us to where we want to go.
Yeah, little habits. Yeah, I know we can, because we're I'm the achievers out there. It's it's temptation to go, let's do all these things, and then it can. I've been there certainly where it caused like the overwhelm and
I have too.
yeah.
I'm not perfect in this by any means.
Yeah, you were sharing as well, like your one. So no, that's some really good guidance. And yeah, I remember the book Atomic Habits was a big bit of a like eye opener for me on that one. So
Absolutely. That's actually, that book really impacted me. And I think that when we're trying to also add in a bunch of different habits, sometimes it's actually more beneficial to take some stuff away. Like, if anybody listening right now, if you could think of one thing that you're doing right now, that if you stopped doing that, maybe it would make everything else a little bit easier. Sometimes it's more beneficial to actually start with taking something away than trying to add something in.
That's good. Yeah, that's good guidance on that. Yeah, trying to get rid of something.
Mm-hmm.
I know we talked about journaling, and I know you've talked about it in kind of like your content and your story and your coaching and stuff like that.
Yeah.
In terms of self-awareness, obviously I see that's quite a good tool. And I've tried various journaling exercises with it, especially after like things like therapy. It's really, really useful to just reflect on things like that. Or coaching sessions when you're receiving on the side. How like has that been your key like self-awareness tool, or has there been any other things that really help you on your kind of self-awareness journey?
Like journaling is for sure number one for me.
Mm.
And I think that like the reason that I'm so invested in it right now was because this is like back years and years ago when I was going through a really difficult time in my life. I started journaling because I was actually really scared to open up to people. Like I was uh, a hockey player, male, like the funny guy. I didn't want people to know that I was going through a tough time. And I just started journaling because it was like having a conversation with myself.
Mm.
And I didn't have to like open up to anybody else about it. And then now today, it's just become such an ingrained habit into my life where I really do see it as that conversation with myself where I can be real. And that's where I've built definitely the most self-awareness. But I think that the other tool for me is conversations with other people too. So like there's the component with having conversations with yourself, but then there's also the component of building relationships in your life where you're able to be open and vulnerable and just kind of like put thoughts and feelings on the table and talk through some things with them. And I've been really blessed to have a couple really amazing friends in my life where I'm able to do that and kind of talk from that and learn about myself and learn from the way that other people see the world. So I would say those two things have really been pivotal for me.
No, that's great. A great couple of tools. And like when you work with like clients or kind of what you've experienced, how like I just kind of want to get your view on how, because we live in the like I know probably in the Canada the same as the UK and the same as the US, but we're always like busy, 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 rush, rush, rush. And there's like all these things to do, and yeah, like giving myself like we were talking about going for a run and actually allowing yourself to think is super, super effective. But like for you, how important or maybe not important is finding time to do self-awareness work?
I think it's one of the most important things you have to do. Like if you're always in the hustle, work, screens, distraction type thing, you're not giving yourself that time to really reflect. And I think that self-reflection has just been it's been everything. Like it's really hard for me to put into words how beneficial that actually is for me. And I'm not gonna lie either. There's times where I get caught up in it too. I think we all kind of do, right?
Yeah.
Like we all can get caught up in it. And it's when I take the step back that I start to be able to see things completely different. And so the thing that I like to say to my clients is like when we're starting to use self-reflection and take that step back from everything that's happening, you go from playing checkers to playing chess. And so you're thinking a lot more about like what the next moves are, where you want to go, maybe how you're feeling about certain things in the moment. You're not just trying to get those quick wins like you do in checkers. And so that I think that it's pivotal to kind of do that kind of stuff in your life. And like as humans, this is what I'm learning even about myself. Again, I'm not perfect with this. As humans, we didn't grow up with like technology like way back when, right? This is just really new for us. So we got to learn how to balance that and let our minds work in the way that they have been developed for, hundreds of thousands of years.
No, thanks for sharing your thoughts on that.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. A couple more things I wanted to kind of ask you about, and one of them is I know you're a man. We're talking about exercise once together. I know you're a man who sort of like goes running, likes going to the gym,
Mhm.
and things like that. Like to do a lot of work and to move where we want to do. Obviously, we need rest and stuff like that as well, but we need energy is one of the key things I've learned. And Tony Robbins, he said they were his top three things. I remember him saying, how do you protect your energy so that you're able to go and do what you want to do in the day and make that impact to other people?
I think it only came from burning myself out. I'm gonna be
Oh,
totally
wow.
honest with that. I went to like I had to though. This is the thing. I really think it's important to test your limits
Mm,
and understand how much output you can have in a day. How much time can I work on one thing? How many conversations can I get in? And then like you reach this kind of point of like, all right, that was too much, and then you can scale it back. And then again, it's kind of like a system. Like, when do I speak best to other people? When is it the best time for me to have my work periods? When do I need to take a break and go for a walk outside? When can I eat? What types of foods can I eat so I'm not feeling so bogged down after? Like, am I being very reliant on coffee? These are all these like questions to kind of factor in. But for me personally, I think that you kind of have to push yourself to a limit and start to see like, okay, where is that limit and how do I scale back to be sustainable so I'm not hitting that thing every single day in an unhealthy way.
mm. And I guess for me, I don't know about you, but the times where you might have that kind of that limit or the average of things you can do.
Mhm.
And then you might have a real tough knockback, maybe some news that emotionally is impacting you. And actually
Yeah,
you have to scale back even more sometimes and just keep it to the bare
absolutely.
minimum. I don't know if that's been your experience as well.
Yeah, yeah. And that kind of comes back to like the self-awareness type thing, right? With like just understanding yourself, like in what kind of state you're in. Like, is this a day where I can punch it? Or is this a day where I need to take that step back? And I've been there, a lot of times, like we're humans. So like we're ultimately there's gonna be things that happen where highly emotional situations and you need to take a step back for a bit. And it's all about just understanding yourself and what kind of area you're in your life at that time.
But yeah, and again, the problem with that is something you go on like social media, you're like, oh, look at all these people working 100 hours a day or 100 hours a week, and you're like,
What are they?
yeah, are
Are
they?
they?
But yeah, that's what we think. Again, that's why I wanted to emphasize it.
Yes. Or like, so I really hate that part of social media. Like I hate the comparison part. And I've fallen into this trap before.
Yeah.
So like I fell into the trap of comparing myself to everybody else. And then I'm like, how is this guy doing this still and like doing all that? But then you truly just have to bring it all back inward. And again, that's like the kind of good and bad of social media today. It's like, yes, it's an amazing tool that we can use, but then it's also this like constant comparison thing that we have. And it's really about understanding how to like, kind of balance the two type thing.
Absolutely. So David, really got some golden nuggets, got a whole page full of notes from you. So appreciate that, as I did. Did expect I'd have got quite a lot to learn from you. So just before we sort of wrap up, is there a final point or you'd like to share with us? And also, where can the listener find you if they want to find out more about your work and what you do?
Yeah. So I think kind of the final thing that I wanted to share about, because this whole theme was kind of built like around confidence type thing.
Mm.
And I really think that confidence is about defining what that means for yourself. Like for so long, I thought confidence meant like you had to be this like almost ego driven person type thing. And now what I'm really starting to see confidence about is like knowing yourself, absolutely knowing yourself and who you are. And when you know yourself, it doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks. And when you start with knowing yourself, then you can start to build more of that competence in your abilities. And as you begin to stack up this evidence into who you say you are, that's really when that confidence starts to shine through. At least it's been like that in my experience. And so I would say start with knowing yourself and then building the evidence that you are who you say you are. And it's going to completely change your life because it's changed mine. But for everybody who's maybe listening right now and you want to kind of connect with me, Instagram is my main platform. You can find me there. It's at David Jachetta. I'm sure it might be tagged down there after the show, and that's going to be the place that I would love to connect and just hear how the podcast kind of, how it resonated with you.
Brilliant. Appreciate you coming on today, David. So thanks once again.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. It's always great chats with you. It's been a little bit of a long time since our last one, but
definitely.
Always great chats together, brother.
We'll shorten that next time. We'll speak soon. So
Absolutely.
that concludes our episode for today. And remember, you are in control of your own self-esteem and confidence.